Hi everybody, welcome back to Jenkins Boat Works. I am Chuck Jenkins, and in this episode we continue working on the kayak, this Chesapeake 18. We got all the fillets in, and now we've pulled the wires, and I will show just a little bit about how I got the wires out. I wasn't happy with the clippers that I had, and I probably could have gone and bought some flush cut clippers, but I don't know. I just started working them over and bending them off. And then we've started sanding to try to get a good radius on these seams so that we'll be able to get the fiberglass cloth on here. So anyway, glad you're back. If you are new to the channel, please consider subscribing. And I think there's a little bell down there you can click if you want to get notified on future episodes. And so anyway, we're glad you're here. Let's jump in and see what kind of progress we've made. Well, so we've trimmed all the wires off. In order to get the panels to hold together, when we were putting the epoxy fillets in, we had copper wire, and you can probably see these little places where the wire came through. When I first started, I was using little pliers like this to snip the wires off. But the problem is that they've got an indention here so that when you snip the wire off, it leaves, 1/16 of an inch or so up above the surface of the plywood. I got these cutters, and they got the same problem, and these other ones, same deal. You can see there's a little gap down in the inside right there to where it doesn't cut it off flush. You can't hold it flat on the plywood and cut them flush. So what I ended up doing is I would take the wire, unwind it, and then take it and start bending it back and forth. And in some cases that took as many as 20 or 22 bends back and forth, back and forth. And what that did then is it would break them off, and it broke them off in the holes. Now that one I can feel just a little bit. That one's I can feel that. That's flush, that's flush, that's flush. But it won't be a big deal to sand these because there's just not much there. If we come look at the ends, they were looking like this, where they're sticking out. So I'm going to have to sand those off. I didn't want to have to sand off however many hundreds of pieces of wire there was in this whole thing. So, see, there's some more there sticking out. Right there, right there. I'm going to have to sand those off of there. It's going to tear up the sandpaper. But the other thing we can look at while we're doing this is how nicely we got these panels together. These seams are exactly as they're supposed to be. And we may take a little bit of thickened epoxy and put right in that crack. But we should be able to take the sander and round these over so that the fiberglass cloth will lay on there. This seam on the keel, same deal. We've got just a little crack there. It's very uniform the whole length of the boat. The only place where my seam's not great is right in here where this top, well, it's the bottom panel, but this piece overlapped this one just a little bit. So you can see over here, we get back to where we have this little V in here that we can fill with epoxy. This one, I may just have to sand this edge off, and quite honestly, that may be good enough. We won't have to fill that one. But for the most part, the seams are really quite nice. Now we're up here close to the bow, and again, you can see we've got these wires that I was using the cutters, and they just didn't get cleanly nipped off. It'll be okay. We'll be able to sand them down. Now, we've sanded on the other side, and so I haven't bored you with video of sanding. But you can see here what happens we've got a nice radius coming over here. Now that feels just a little pointy right there. I may come back and just take off just a little bit right there. But for the most part, we've got a pretty nice rounded over seam. And you want that because you want the fiberglass to lay in there and not hang up. We've got a little bit of a seam, little crack in here, a couple places where we're probably going to come put some thickened epoxy in there. The other thing you have to be super careful of with this Okumi plywood, it is so thin that the layers are thin. And it's easy to start sanding through the top layer. And here's an example. You can see right here, or even as I'm just rounding that off, you see that little line coming down around there. I started sanding into the next layer, so I quit. Got a pretty fair curve coming into the bow here, so that's pretty nice. So you can see it happened here too. And I think at the bow here like this, there's just no way to avoid that. But see, you can even see here, I started to get into that other layer. I want that smooth. That's why it's so important to get your panels tied together, double check them so that when you're at this stage, you're not having issues. The other thing we're doing is we're sanding off those little pieces of copper wire that were sticking up. So overall, we've got the stern in pretty good shape. Didn't hardly sand through any there. You can just a little bit right there. It's going to be okay. That's not a big problem. It's coming right along. We're going to be fiberglassing in no time. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.